Donald Trump announces he will nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head the Department of Health and Human Services. Speaker Mike Johnson orders 18 federal departments to preserve and retain documents related to their actions under the Biden administration. And green energy globalists grapple with having to deal with the incoming Trump administration. We have those stories and so much more. Blaze News Tonight starts right now. Welcome to the chaos. I'm Jill Savage. Today is Thursday, November 14th. Now, yesterday, Donald Trump unveiled 3 more administration picks: Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. And as we just said, Trump also picked RFK Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. So here to break it all down is Matthew Peterson. He's the editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Kevin Roberts. He's an author and president of Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action. So Kevin, there's so much going on every single day this week, but what are the latest thoughts from you on these picks?
Well, we are well on our way, maybe even ahead of schedule, Jill, in restoring the American dream. We all had high expectations for this incoming Trump-Vance administration, but President Trump isn't messing around. He understands that there's limited time, not just one more term for him, but if you think about facing midterm elections in 2026, he realizes that the first 100 days, the first year of that second term that the American people gave him last week, all are essential for restoring the American dream. These cabinet appointments are essential to doing that. And what's really important to look for, as I know you and Matt will do, will be the plans that come in with these cabinet appointees, as well as their key deputies. These are things that the conservative movement, as we have discussed, have been working on. We're also very confident that the men and women who are going to serve in the administration, in addition to the cabinet secretaries, understand what time it is. It's time to take our country back.
Kevin, I want to get into the plans in a minute, but first, I want you to respond to one of the objections that you'll hear from the right. I mean, we know people are freaking out on CNN and MSNBC. It's not even like their minds are blown at this point. It's just sort of shock and awe, it's like overwhelmed, really. They don't know what to say. But on the right, you'll hear people say, look, Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, these people they're just not qualified. And the best objection of these objections, which I don't agree with, is something like, and that means that they'll get eaten alive when they get in there. They won't be able to adequately do anything because they'll get the runaround. What do you think about that?
Yeah, they said the same thing. The British-dominated press said the same thing of American patriots in the Revolution. They said the same thing about General Eisenhower in the early 1940s. I can go on and on listing these American heroes. And ultimately, that's swamp talk, Matt. These are people, not just including on the right, but especially on the political right, who understand that by virtue of appointing these disruptors, whether it's my really good friend Pete Hegseth, who's going to be an awesome defense secretary, whether it's Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, whether it's RFK as HHS secretary, that the gig is up. That the K Street dominated ridiculous policy that inverts the way America should work is coming to an end. It inverts it in this way. It prioritizes the interest of Washington and New York elites ahead of ordinary Americans. And if Trump and Vance's victory means anything, it means that we're restoring what this country is supposed to be about, which is that this is a place where ordinary Americans, regardless of where you're from, where your people came from, run this country. And K Street and the swamp hate that.
Indeed, they do. And that's why it's a beautiful time to be alive. So talk about the plans. When these people go in, these are people who are willing and I would say able to carry out the sorts of things that people on the right have been talking about for decades. I feel that in my bones. But say more about this, because you're already releasing this Dawn's Early Light. You have a book of plans, I take it, for how to address some of this stuff. And so, how do you look at this? You look at the situation now. Is this a matter of, picking and choosing different plans among different sides? Is this a matter of, how are they going to get this done?
Well, you're kind to mention my book, which I will be happy to talk about momentarily. But let me say something that, at least in the short term, is more important than that. And it is that Donald Trump is showing his experience as a president, obviously having served one term, and he's showing his experience as a CEO. Matt, you and I over the last several years have talked about leadership, about CEOs in the for-profit and nonprofit worlds. And what you're seeing is Donald Trump at his best in terms of the gifts that God gave him. And that is, he's choosing not just men and women who are ready to implement policies, but they've got the virtue of courage and they have the virtue of fortitude. And in other words, he's going to delegate the details of these plans while continuing to articulate what the vision is for them. My book is related to this in the sense that one of the jobs that Heritage has, and we're humble about this, I mean no hubris in this, is to articulate what we think the long-term vision for all of this is to be. In other words, the best plans, whether they're in defense or HHS or in the Department of Justice or in education, need to be plans that certainly are detailed as it relates to the first 100 days, the first year. But if those detailed tactical plans are not connected to the ultimate objective, which isn't merely to diminish the power of the administrative state, but to do that in the name of restoring self-governance, then these are short-term plans that the swamp will, in fact, succeed in eating alive. In other words, what every one of these cabinet secretaries needs to do is not just hire good men and women who can implement those plans and have the competence and expertise to do so, but they must remember that a vital part of their daily jobs, certainly for the first year, is continuing to communicate to the American people the why. And it's articulating the why Donald Trump believes this country was teetering on the brink of devolving into a terrible last chapter in American history that won him the election. By the way, I'm confident that they will do that. And what we're trying to do by publishing this book now is offer a friendly reminder that we might be entering a golden era of conservative policy reform if, in fact, we've got the plans and the people to do so.
Yeah, Knowing Your Why is in all of the leadership books out there. And I hope that we see that come through in the federal government. But if people want to play along at home and make sure that these things are actually going to be done, what are some of the signposts, Kevin, that they should be looking for to get this implemented?
Well, the first one in the short term, in terms of signpost, Jill, and I love that metaphor, will be what we're already seeing from the transition and from President Trump, appointing good men and women. The second will be, and this will come in the next weeks and months, what are the plans? What in fact will be RFK's plans early on for HHS? But the second phase, and in a lot of ways, it's more important than Washington. Is that we revitalize federalism. If in fact we want to devolve power from Washington back to the states, we have to make Washington a lot less important in our lives. And one of the ways we do that is to make sure that states have appropriate power and authority in a complementary way with Washington. But it's the third part that I think is the most important and that I emphasize in my book. And it goes right in line, Jill, with your question about how people can play along at home. Washington's important, but not the most important. State capital is important, but not the most important. The single most important thing individuals can do at home is to pay attention to their families, to the relationships they have, and to be present in meetings of their county commission, of their county executive, of their school boards. In other words, federal politics, national politics, as important as they've been to us this year, are the least important when compared to what we do in our daily lives. It is time for us to regenerate the institutions, our schools, our colleges, our civic associations that actually make Washington be a lot less important.
Well, Kevin, it's Dawn's Early Light. Where can people go pick that up?
A local bookstore, but also Amazon. We would be grateful if you do that. Everything benefits not just the Heritage Foundation, but the conservative movement in this cause. And of course, we're grateful for everything you do at the Blaze.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. And it's been such a great week around here. We've been just having such a great time. I mean, Peterson is laughing and smiling all the time. So it's a fun one to be a part of. Thanks so much for your time.
You bet. We want to keep that smile on Peterson's face.
That's
it's very encouraging.
That's right, we do. And Matthew, I think it's interesting just to see and hear all of the ideas that are coming out, and just knowing for the first time, really, since my adult life, that we feel like we can actually implement some form of government that we want to see.
Yeah, well, you know what I liked about what he said? What he said about the CEOing that Trump has done is find people who have courage. And that's where these people all look for expert opinion and expert, status and prestige and expert checkboxes. No, you need people who have the courage to go and implement actually, right, the plan. And so, it doesn't take a rocket science in a way to put the plan together when people have been talking about what needs to change for decades. It takes people who are going to go in and actually do it, and they're not going to care about the obstacles. They'll find ways around them. And so that to me is very encouraging. And I think he's exactly right. Kevin's exactly right about that. That's why it's different this time. Not because people are more expert or, smarter. It's because they actually have the courage to say, no, they're doing it for the right reasons, and they have the courage to do it. You can't fake that virtue. You either have it or you don't. And these people, if they have it, they will implement what we've long wanted them to implement.
And courage is contagious. When we come back, our next guest says that Merrick Garland's DOJ may violate the Federal Records Act to cover their tracks. Next. As the world teeters on the brink of annihilation, Dietrich Bonhoeffer is swept into the epicenter of a deadly plot to assassinate Hitler in Angel Studios' upcoming film Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. It comes to theaters on November 22nd. Talk about courage is contagious. You can get showtimes right now at angel.com/Gietl. So will his faith in his fate, they're both at stake. Bonhoeffer has to choose between upholding his moral convictions or risking it all to save millions of Jews from genocide. So will this shift from preaching peace to plotting murder alter the course of history or cost him everything? Now, I can tell you, I've already watched this. This movie is so good. I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to actually buy tickets for my friends to go see it in theaters because Angel Studios has done such a good job bringing this story to life. The production value of this movie is so good. They made Cabrini too. So if you saw that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this movie is a must-see for the times in which we live. You can find it this Thanksgiving. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Gietl. The National Archives and Records Administration is reportedly working overtime to purge federal records and cover up the DOJ's action during the Biden administration. J. Michael Waller, he's a senior analyst for the strategy at Center for Security Policy. He reported on this on X, and he's here to break it all down for us. So how did you find out what was going on and just the whole premise of this story where they're just trying to get rid of the records before the Trump administration comes in and takes over?
Well, there are a lot of good people still in the system, or at least enough of them to let us know what's going on. And what we've learned is that for years, every single federal agency has been in violation of federal law, of the Federal Records Act, as it was amended even under the Obama administration for electronic records. So they've been destroying records that are part of our national heritage. It's the property of all of us. And they're destroying these archival records for carelessness purposes and for political purposes. So what we have right now is a wholesale destruction of federally owned documents.
So can you give us a picture of the sorts of things that we could be talking about that would be significant?
Well, Matt, the main ones are electronic documents. This would include emails, text messages, Skype or Zoom interviews and conferences, any recordings like that, which under the law are to be preserved for the National Archives, for future researchers and for part of our record of our system of government. There are ways to remove or destroy these documents that are legal under the law, but no government agency is abiding by the law, especially agencies like the Department of Justice.
Yeah, you're saying it's illegal, but if nobody's actually going to go after the people doing the illegal things, then there's really no incentive to stop them from doing so. Isn't that part of the problem? And do you think that is actually going to change moving forward?
Well, let's hope it will change. I mean, this is something that nobody really paid attention to. No presidents of any party really paid attention to because, records and documents and archives are kind of boring unless you're an archivist or a researcher or an investigative journalist. Otherwise, people just don't care. And really, when you're thinking of deleting your own emails and so forth or texts, well, it's okay to do it on your own phone, but not on a taxpayer-issued phone. And this is part of the problem. So there are legal ways to do it, and there are legal channels to do it, and there are actual officials whose exact title and job description are to be in charge of doing this and to consult with the National Archives and Records Agency for how to do this properly. And in these cases, it just hasn't been done. Now, they got smart in July, right when about Biden was pushed out and Kamala Harris was brought in to run. One of the very top people at the National Archives and Records Administration went over. He took a demotion. His name was Lawrence Brewer. He took a demotion to go over to the Department of Justice to show DOJ how they can appear to comply with the law and destroy their records in a way that's undetectable and might or might not be legal looking.
Yeah. So, and this is really important because here we have something the entire nation cares about. This is a large part of the election is that people would go in and clean house at DOJ and these other agencies. And what you're describing is an effort that's already been underway for months to scrub everything, right? To wipe like the CD, as Hillary would say, to wipe it. So this is exceedingly alarming. I would say maybe not surprising to some of us at all. So the big question is, what can be done about it? I mean, it is illegal, and you have an administration coming in. I mean, how do we triage this? What do we do?
Well, I think the first thing to do is for President Trump to come right out and say, there is a Federal Records Act that has 3-year prison sentences for the illegal destruction of documents. And what I'm going to do as president is to press criminal charges against anyone responsible for the illegal destruction of documents or the concealment or alteration of documents and throw the book at him. Not just 3-year sentence for the whole thing, 3-year sentence per document.
Well, that's an interesting thought. I hope that it happens. Some things, though, that we've seen in this last 9 days, it does give us a little smile on our face. It does make us think that maybe we can take back some of the power in D.C. What have you thought since Donald Trump got elected and the moves that you've seen him make so far? What are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, they're really bold moves. It was a surprise to see Matt Gaetz named as Attorney General. And first I was sort of scratching my head, but then I thought, no, you need a bull in the china shop to rip the rot out of the place. And there's nobody like Matt Gaetz who can do that. So he seems to be the man for the job, but a complete surprise.
Yeah. And so you get people, shocked by all this. And then you get people, just just happy. The main concern, the only concern that I have, and this is where, I want your thoughts, is when these people go in to do this, what you just described to us is actually going to affect all of them. I mean, most of these issues are about cleaning house and looking back to the past and making sure the American people are aware of exactly what happened. I mean, everything from Fauci and the COVID stuff. I mean, it's all over the place if you're going to clean this out. And that also would entail, I would imagine, speaking to the public. These people are going to need to speak to the public about this issue. But what's your sense of, we can talk about that and also in general, what's your sense of what will be required, to go in and actually clean house?
If you do it the right way, it can be done. Just think the top people in these administrative positions, the political appointees, they often have their own lawyers or they have the financial means to get their own lawyers, but their underlings don't. They're anonymous underlings. So what you do is you go after the underlings. You give them the prospect of either lawyering up or turning state's evidence against their bosses. And that's how you clean house in cases like this.
I think that's what we're all going to be looking forward to. And it's just one of those things that every single day we get another nominee out there. And it's actually an exciting time to watch what's going on in Washington, D.C. J. Michael Waller, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jill and Matt.
And Matt, I think it's important to to just highlight the cases like this, because there is so much that can be done right now as we look forward. But they can't keep getting away with this. And in the name, and it's kind of funny to me, the name that kept popping in my head during that whole time was Sandy Berger, when he stuffed the documents down his pants and went through. And that was for the Clinton administration, right? Like that was the old school way of they had the printed documents, but now they don't even have to be on sheets of paper. They can just erase text messages or emails.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, nothing is ever, digital technology is about recording. It's about memory and retrieval and holding everything. So it's hard to actually wipe anything. But yes, it's in a sense, it's easier. I mean, I want the opinion piece from him ASAP. We need to publish this and promulgate it. I've only seen a few other people talking about it yet. Yeah. We need the attention of the American people and leaders paid to the issue. We need to start talking about it out loud a lot. Don't get rid of anything because justice is coming, right? And I think what he just said is true, right? If it's up to 3 years in jail, if you really make clear that you're gonna prosecute, you'll see it change. Because here's the thing: it's hard for official DC to realize that they're actually in trouble.
That's exactly.
I saw
the point.
Andy McCabe on CNN or MSNBC, one of these channels last night. They asked him, "Are you afraid?" He's like, "Oh, I'm afraid for the Department of Justice and whatever." Yeah. But I don't feel the fear yet. Once they realize this is real and that sets in, and people are actually going to go to prison, I think we'll see a sea change.
Yeah, they're like, I'm afraid for my department right now. And eventually that is going to turn to be like, oh, no, I should be afraid for all of the things that I'm doing, not just saving the department that may or may not be there after Doge. When we come back, we'll explain how climate crusaders are trying to undermine Trump. Don't go anywhere. Well, if you like what we're doing around here and you want to have a great way to show other people that, you know, you like watching and listening to all of us, and you're going to love what we have going on at Blaze Media. We have all the merchandise available at shop.blazemedia.com. We have everything from Blaze Heritage, Blaze Media Collection, Agua Donkeys, all of the Trump Vance 2024 merch is still there. It can be on a jacket, a t-shirt, a flag, a whole lot more. There's so much over there that you're going to love. It's a great Christmas gift as well. If you're looking for your loved ones already, go to shop.blazemedia.com today. And I mean, check out all the cool stuff that we have from Blaze Media, and be sure to use our promo code BLAZE10. It'll get you 10% off your entire order at shop.blazemedia.com. Promo code BLAZE10 for 10% off. Go check it out. At the recent UN Climate Summit, global leaders assured the world that they will continue to fight the climate change through Donald Trump's second term. John Podesta is Biden's top climate diplomat. He said that state governments and businesses in the United States will remain committed to the cause, even if Trump is not. So here to discuss is Justin Haskins. He's the director of Socialism Research Center at the Heartland Institute. So, Justin, do you anticipate Trump's policies like going towards the United Nations and the green agenda, or are we done with this? Are we pushing this to the side?
Oh, it's all done. It is all done, and it's so fantastic. I'm so excited about it. One of the big things that Trump did in his first term in office was pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, put American domestic energy production first. All of that is going to happen again. Of course, that involves fossil fuels, which all of these people are obsessed with getting rid of in the European Union. And so I don't think any of this is going to actually happen. I think that what they want to do is put Trump in a situation where, you know, he's imperiling the world supposedly by an existential climate change catastrophe that's coming at some point in the future, which keeps getting moved back every 10, 15, 20 years whenever it doesn't happen.
Global cooling, global warming, global cooling. I don't know which one we're on right now.
That's
we're all going to die.
Yeah, we're all going to die is the point, and it's going to be Trump's fault. It's going to be the argument. But the reality is that Donald Trump's policies on this are very, very clear. We are going to be producing our own energy. We are going to be looking into other kinds of energy development to see what the best form of energy is. The cleaner, the better, always. But domestic energy production so that we're not dependent on foreign countries, affordable energy so that we can grow our economy, keep costs down, reduce inflation. All of that is part of the Trump agenda. He's been crystal clear on this, and I don't care what John Podesta says. That's what's going to happen.
People will die, Justin. People will die.
Okay, so
what about? Yes, I like to remind myself of that every day. It makes me happier. Podesta, speaking of Podesta has been one of these people who's claimed that this is going to be hard to roll back. So, I mean, obviously, when it comes to, ambassador to UN, like a facing out, he's going to push against this stuff. But if you take these people seriously, I mean, they've had some time to build this apparatus. They've been building it for a long time, and you've been investigating it and telling us about it for a long time. So climate legislation, Inflation Reduction Act, Podesta says this has staying power. Like they're claiming, don't worry, guys. There's a lot of this that he's just not going to be able to destroy. Is that true?
Yeah, so a lot of what the Biden-Harris administration did was through executive action. The Inflation Reduction Act really was more about printing lots of money and spending it on things and had a lot less to do, which is ironic because it's called the Inflation Reduction Act, but that's a whole other thing. But what Trump can actually reverse a lot of this just through executive orders, which he's going to do. So a lot of this has to do with decreasing the regulatory burden on oil and gas drilling. A lot of it has to do with the fuel efficiency standards for cars and getting rid of EV mandates, electric vehicle mandates, things of that nature. And a lot of that can be reversed. Now, banking and the financial institutions around the world, a big part of what has been going on with the Great Reset and other things is big financial institutions all getting together saying, we are not going to finance fossil fuels anymore. We're going to kill it that way. And theoretically, that would be harder to get rid of course. But Trump has very clearly said on numerous occasions that when he comes back into power, he's going to kill ESG to the best of his ability. Through some of that can be done through executive orders. Some of it might be require laws being passed. But a lot of that can be done through executive action, like banking, for example. The federal government has the authority to tell nationally chartered banks, which are all the big banks, that they cannot discriminate against industries on the basis of non-financial criteria. So he said he's going to do this. He actually did do it at the very end of his first term. And then one of the first things Biden did when he came in was get rid of that rule. So he can do things like that as well. And so I think the other thing to keep in mind is that Europe, without America's support, then they already don't have China's support on any of this. Those are the two biggest, issues when we're talking about CO2 emissions. So they might as well just give up because there's no way to reduce global CO2 emissions without China being on board and without America being on board, but especially China.
Well, you're talking about the banks and you're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. And I saw this headline and I have to get your take on this because the Davos crowd, everybody loves the old Davos crowd. For the World Economic Forum, it's going to be a tenfold increase to get in this year. It's going to go from $115 to $1,000. And that doesn't even get you into the main conference room. For that, you have to pay $30,000, Justin. So you get like the little side deals, right? So while they're trying to take over the world, have their little backroom deals, it's going to cost them a ton more to get in. You'd think that, if you're part of the global elite, you want the people coming in.
No, they don't want the people coming in. I love Davos because these are the people who they have $1,000 shrimp cocktail dinners and, they just lavish themselves with the most extravagant things that you could possibly imagine. There are many, many stories about that, which are just incredible. While at the same time saying we're doing this for the stakeholders. Those are the people like you and us. We're the stakeholders, but we don't get to go to be part of any of it. So we just have to trust that our stakeholder overlords are doing what we want them to do. And now, even if I was invited theoretically, which of course I would never be invited, I have to pay $1,000 or something just to go.
That's one of the things.
It's unbelievable.
The Blaze somehow, some way needs to get you in there.
Oh God, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be
fantastic?
incredible?
That would be so great. And the other thing that's really crazy about this too is that the main event stuff and a lot of the side things at Davos is all recorded and streamed on the internet anyway. Right. So you're paying $1,000 or whatever it is just so that you can be there and say that you were there, which is the most Davos thing I can imagine.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we need to remember too, this is a great elite get together in a sense where people go party. And it really, one of the underplayed parts of this is just feeling important.
Yep.
So if you feel important because you're doing something for the gods of the city, which in this case are the climate gods, right? I'm here and I am representing all these people. I'm actually an aristocrat who represents all the people and the peasants who I take care of in my region, right? and I'm here to do good, and this is my sort of church, if you will. I remember once, Leonardo DiCaprio finally wins an Oscar, and then he goes up and talks about like the climate. It's like his gods, right? I mean, it's like this is his religion. This is like the most important thing he does that sort of validates his life. So, but I think this is interesting, and I want to get your take on this because maybe I'm too hopeful this week. Because I'm feeling pretty good.
It's a good time to be hopeful right now. It really is.
Yes. So we have here in this article, Jill's talking about, it feels like a cash grab, said an executive at one large WF sponsor, as if a marketing person has gone in and told them they're underselling brand Davos. Frankly, I have no idea where they're going to put all these people you already can't move. So what is brand Davos now, though? I feel like it is a cash grab, and in part, this is like a big, oversaturated, like overripe tomato that might just implode at this point, because do we feel the same way? Does everyone really feel the same way about this or take it seriously in the same way now? It feels to me like things have changed politically and culturally, and a lot of people are just going through the motions. The religious aspect of it is just a ritual that doesn't have any life to it.
Yeah, I gotta believe that the Trump election has to just gut them of any feeling of being meaningful, because they tried so hard to destroy this one person. And I've been talking about that a lot, the last couple of weeks. The most amazing thing about all of this, the biggest loser of this election was not Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is not the biggest loser, because Kamala Harris is the most untalented person to ever get this close to being in the White House ever. Mm-hmm. This is like a handicapped person almost winning a gold medal at the Olympics, coming just short. She has no business being there, and she almost got it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, she started 90 meters ahead for the 100-meter dash.
Totally. I mean, that's fantastic. I think that's great. She shouldn't have been there. She almost got there. The biggest losers are the people who spent 10 years trying to destroy one person in media, government, international institutions, Davos, all the big corporations, everybody all working together to destroy one person, and they couldn't. Not only did they not destroy him, they couldn't keep him from being the most powerful person in the world. This is a failure on a scale that we've never seen before in history, and it is glorious.
Yeah, they were centimeters away from actually killing him. And now the biggest winners, Justin, are if you're a politician from the state of Florida, this is your week. This is what everybody has been waiting for. Hey, thanks for breaking everything down for us. We always love it to have you in studio.
Thanks.
When we come back, we'll give you a look at Blaze Media's newest frontier just ahead. Blaze Media recently launched Frontier magazine. It's aimed at putting the life back into our way of life. And we're joined now by Peter Gietl. He's the managing editor for Frontier, and he's going to tell us all about the vision behind the project. But Matthew, first, I want to start with you because, this is your thing too. And you recently put an article out explaining the mission behind Frontier. So can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, I wrote an article about the path forward for really the right and anyone who cared about America. And in that article, I said, as for the American Mind, another publication I'd started before I was at Blaze. And in that article, I said, look, you're now in the middle of a movement that's going to fundamentally transform the America you've known, a commercial cultural movement that is going to make everyone question their assumptions. And I went through and gave the evidence for that, which was that people like in tech, say, outside of politics, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, we're already talking about American dynamism or, I'm going to buy X and do this statesmanship. We need freedom again. Everyone was trying to get out from under woke capital and woke control, this sort of tyrannical spirit that had possessed America. And you could see the reaction to it rising. And I thought, my job at the time was to foment and foster that commercial cultural movement, which is, we move by ideas, but we live in a society in which those ideas are embodied in media. You see how other people live and you emulate that. Advertising is usually important and influential on us, right? So you need the money to follow the products and services in the media that's moving in a different direction where everything isn't dictated by the woke commissars. And you could see that movement rising. And so I spent really 3 years traveling the country and talking to lots of people and bringing them together and trying to foster this movement. And one of the things that we created was a publication called Return, with James Polis really put his heart and soul into it. And that was about technology. And Peter joined us at that time because technology is so important to everything that's happening. It's really about more than tech. It's about tech, spirituality, culture, what is at the forefront of these changes. And so Peter had been working on that. And then when we came to Blaze, the goal was, can we just create the magazine for this entire movement, right? And before this election, we decided the name of that magazine had to be Frontier. And I think you can feel now what I talk about in this article, which I still haven't gotten to, but I will, in your bones. We are in, right? We have found a frontier where we're open, where we're free, and we can build again. And Frontier, the magazine, is about this new movement that you see now firmly establishing itself and full-blown just rising to the fore, as I predicted in that article, and have been working so hard to make happen ever since. It's happening now.
Exactly. When we were sitting down originally and discussing what this could be and what this magazine had the potential to be, it was never like, oh, here's another product that we can sell some things and we're just going to do the same thing. There was almost, I felt kind of like a spiritual calling of we had to create a tangible piece of art that spoke to this movement, that spoke to what we're all working on and creating. And just to follow up with, I will read very briefly a sentence that you wrote in this I thought was really telling, and I think it means a lot more now as we're with the election and everything that we're moving into. We write for those who refuse to accept incompetence and decay and still seek excellence, who seek work and love alike with meaning and higher purpose. We write for those who still love the human and seek to perpetuate and enrich humanity rather than snuff it out. How do you, if you could talk a little bit more about this moment, and yes, the magazine, but what are we moving to, and what can we cover and create and discover about this new time in America?
Well, first off, when you think about what a frontier is, right, and what it means to America, it used to mean a line, like hundreds of years ago, like just a line, a borderline. But in America, a frontier was a place because it's the unsettled area. It's the unsettled area. So there's the country, right, at the time, and then there was the settled area where you were coming behind the line, right, and you had your little house on the prairie. They're in like the settled area. They have their little house and their homesteads. And then outside of that, you have the frontier, and that's where savagery meets civilization. That's where you're truly free to be both good or evil. We all have that within our heart. And the screens and the numbness makes us unfree. We don't even realize we have this choice. So now people are feeling that they have that freedom. They're feeling, oh my gosh, just today, right? I mean, RFK Jr. could be, this guy is going to be in charge of HHS. Anything is possible, right? We could redesign stuff. We can, Elon is doing this all the time, right? You look at the spaceships, this realm of possibility, if it brings forth this idea of freedom again, and then it's, okay, well, what do we need to establish? And we knew we needed this free space because it was tyrannical before. Mm-hmm. And so on one side, we have a force that says, we're anti-human. We want to transform fundamentally humanity and to turn it into some sort of strange godlike thing using material parts that to the rest of us looks monstrous and scary because it is, and evil. And the other side, you have people saying we want to perpetuate humanity in the human and make people the best sort of thing they can be. And that means going back to the virtues, and that means controlling ourselves. That doesn't mean enslaving ourselves into vice. So I think those sides are rapidly becoming clear, have become clear, and now you have this possibility. Everyone feels that they live on the frontier, so you want to look around and see, well, what can we build? How should we rebuild, right? We have to think about all the institutions we've been talking about. Kevin Roberts was on today, Waller, all these people know the institutions we have, they suck, they need to be torn down. What should we build? You go to the frontier and you look back and you take what's good, right, out with you, and then you can rebuild, you can build anew, and that is the task for us now.
And part of what's really cool about this and opportunity is journalists actually going out and telling these stories. And they don't do this anymore. Blaze sent me down to El Salvador for a week to talk about what's going on with Bitcoin and Bukele and the transformation. And we have all the, journalism of new tech scenes emerging that are going to challenge Silicon Valley, as well as whiskey reviews and, showcasing products that don't hate us. It was really, that I think is really important in this magazine, of getting to what you're talking about, is there have to be these places that journalists are still going out and telling these stories in a positive vision, not lamenting the destruction of going, no, there are people who are fighting to save our society, to rebuild, and to find new ways of living.
Yes, and it's so important, because the way that we learn is not someone, just giving us an argument and telling us, okay, giving me the syllogism, the argument, and telling you here's the conclusion. You can memorize that, and maybe at some point, if you meditate on it and look at real stuff that applies to it, you can internalize it, right? But the real way you learn is just by showing, right? Seeing how other people are living. And right now, there's a lot of open-ended questions. We don't know. We are in a frontier. How, for instance, are you supposed to deal with technology in your own life and in your kid's life when all of us know, we sit there at night and scroll, we know we're making ourselves dumber in some way, right? Okay, so give me the actual best practices, because also technology is useful, right? And the feeds are useful, and we're on them, and we learn from X and whatever. What are the best practices? How should a person act who's aspiring and wants to be excellent in this society? Well, different people have different answers, and some of them are doing really interesting things, whether it's designing new products or whether it's actually living certain ways of life. That's what I want to know about. I want to know about that more than, God forbid, on this Blaze News tonight, more than what's going on in the news, right? I mean, I want to know how we should live our life, and who is doing interesting things that make a better way of life possible for all of us. What make America great again? Okay, what is the American way of life in the 21st century? What does that look like? Because we can't just go back. I mean, great again. I'd love to go back to some of the past, but what should it look like now, given those principles and traditions that are good? That is the question, and everyone who's asking that question seriously is asking an open-ended question, and they're on the frontier with us. And if you subscribe to Frontier, you're exploring this whole new movement with us. We are going out there. I mean, Peter went to El Salvador, right? Among other places, right? You interviewed Rufo in Seattle. Yeah. Matt Taibbi writes about going to Elon's offices in the first Twitter files in Frontier. So, we interviewed Glenn, but not Glenn Beck, the media star you all know and love. Glenn, the man who is trying to save America's story, quite literally and viscerally, by bringing together. Peter was there with me for that interview, by bringing together all these artifacts, which physically tell America's story that otherwise are being discarded. Those are the kinds of things we want to know about in the frontier.
And you guys can tell we're just getting started, right? And you can hear the passion in their voice. And everybody right now, we feel this renewed sense that we can retake the country, rebuild it in the way that we want to. So if you want to join, it's blazeunlimited.com/frontier. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll be right back to wrap up the show. We are ready to take back the power in Washington, D.C. We are anxiously awaiting the next Donald Trump nominations, the ones that we've seen so far this week, Matthew. The legacy media is losing their mind, right? Hegseth, all the way to Matt Gaetz. And then today we get RFK Jr. out there. And people are talking about him and his Make America Healthy Again movement. Some might argue, though, it's not supposed to be maha. We just need maha.
Yeah.
We just need to make America healthy for the first time in a lot of people's lives. And we actually have that opportunity to do so now.
Yeah, I could use some make America healthy. What an incredible message going to the actual things that help human beings, right? I mean, I love the simplicity of it and the truth of it, and the fact that you're going to have a guy who is not going to hesitate when it comes to, assuming he gets in there, when it comes to all the things that we've been concerned about with HHS, which is ginormous. This is an incredibly enormous apparatus with a ton of corruption, and from Fauci to Big Pharma in general. I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting times.
Listen, if RFK Jr. does get in there for this department, I would not be opposed to him having some chats with the CIA, FBI, whoever, if he just wants to go over there and lend a helpful hand, just have a coffee meeting with them, I would be totally
do feel like
fine
there's a
with that.
certain FOIA request that he should make about some incidents that happened some decades ago. and make sure the final records related to JFK and all of that come out. That would be amazing, and I would imagine expected at this point. And that's why what Waller said today on the show was so important. I mean, make sure they're not destroying the records, because we're going to need those.
I feel like this part of the show for 2 days in a row is now dedicated to a Steve Deace post out there on X, because today he said that he is ready to have Trump's baby right now in response to the RFK Jr. stuff.
One of my favorite moments of the day. So how far have we come, Steve? How far have we come? Steve had his, truth-telling mission. He wanted DeSantis, right? Things got a little heated between him and a lot of followers and people. He took a lot of crap for it, and he was standing up on his principles about who he thought was the best candidate. And now he is saying he wants to have Trump's baby. It's a beautiful thing.
In the Trump administration, they would correctly tell him only women can have babies. That's not something that a man can do, Steve.
We love Steve.
But we love
Steve.
But we love that anyway. And I love just his own path where he went through and he saw that they were trying to kill Donald Trump. And he said, you know what? I put the lawn sign. He said he was going to wait until Monday. He said, you know what? I did it that Saturday. I went and got it. The lawn sign went up. And from that moment on, and I feel like it is, I mean, obviously, this is not breaking news to anybody, but from that moment on July 13th, everything has changed, and we would not have the excitement that we have right now with the picks that he has, with the level that he is just attacking this first 9 days after being elected, because he wouldn't have, in my opinion, this type of enthusiasm, excitement. Elon Musk tweeting out and just saying everybody, all these young men are paying attention. I don't feel like we would be as connected without that moment.
No, so there was this surge of momentum, and Steve represents a lot of different people who had all kinds of opinions. We have different opinions about who should run or whatever. Remember, Trump went through the doldrums for a while. Like in the last 2 years, there were periods where he thought, well, is he really even campaigning? Like, what's going on? The low point in this comeback story was a thing. It was sort of dark. You didn't know what was going on. It was sort of quiet. And then he starts to campaign. He comes out as a candidate. And when that happens, I totally agree with you. No one has talked about this enough. Everything changed. Everything in this country changed, because you saw the man's soul bared for a minute as he almost died in a miracle that can only be described as providential, live on TV. Everything changed, even if they didn't want to talk about it. And that's the moment. Remember, Elon Musk was not out as a Trump supporter until that moment.
No.
I mean, this has only been a few months. But as soon as that happened, everyone just sort of saw something, and something snapped, and something changed. And it's been surging ever since. And it is every day now, with all these picks that are sending these people, you don't even understand, like their minds, it's beyond their minds being blown. I mean, they're like numb with shock in Washington, D.C. right now.
I would love to see the texts that are coming into your phone. Just knowing the way that D.C. is run and all the things that they're thinking right now.
And the funny thing is, from good people on the right, they're like, what? But then a lot of them, they calm down. They're like, oh, actually, yes, because it's just showing new possibilities.
It's new possibilities every
country.
Single day. We'll bring you all the new possibilities here on Blaze News tonight, so be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We'll break it all down for you tomorrow night. Have a good one.